Good evening. The 2024 Windham Southeast School District Annual Meeting is now in order. As has been the tradition of the school district for many years, for all those who would like to, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. I would like to take this opportunity to welcome everybody this evening. Members of the class of 2026 are out in the lobby selling refreshments. The bathrooms are located outside the rear doors to the right. I'd like to take this opportunity to recognize Jamie Danciro and the custodial staff here at the high school for facilitating the setup for this meeting. We could not do it without that team. Now, by way of introductions tonight, I'd like to introduce Deborah Stanford, the Vice Chairperson of the Windham Southeast School District Board and the Acting Chairperson for tonight's meeting.
And I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce the board members to my right. Can you hear me now? Okay, sorry. So I would like to take this opportunity to introduce the board members to my immediate right, beginning with, and I wrote down their names, beginning with Kim Price from Brattleboro, Tim Maciel from Brattleboro, Matt Shibley from Brattleboro, Robin Morgan from Brattleboro, Sean Murphy from Guilford, Ruby McAdoo from Putney, Eva Nolan from Dummerston, and Ann Beekman from Putney, and I hail from Dummerston.
Thank you very much. Mark Spino, would you please introduce the administration officials who are with us this evening?
Happy to do so. Here's our stellar admin team, and I'll start with the curriculum office. If you could please rise and wave to the audience. Paul Smith, curriculum coordinator. Bryn Tucker, curriculum coordinator. Our special education office, Tate Erickson, our director. Whitney Line, our elementary coordinator. Kevin Drury, our secondary coordinator. From the Office of Diversity and Equity, Michaela Sims, our director. And now our school principals. John Sessions at Putney Central. Julianne Egan, Dummerston. Kate Margaitis, Green Street School. Mary Kaufman, Oak Grove. Kelly Diaz, Academy School. John Gagnon, Guilford Central. Keith Lyman, BAMS. Tom Dotton, Assistant Principal, BAMS. Now BUHS, Hannah Parker, Principal. Cassie Domkohler, Assistant Principal. Tracy Lane, Assistant Principal. Chris Brewer, Dean of Students. And our Windham Regional Career Center Director, Nancy Weiss. Central Office representatives, Mo Hart, Executive Assistant. And of course, Frank Rucker, our Business Administrator.
Thank you, Superintendent. Unless there is any objection from the body, those members of the administration and officers who are not residents of the district may speak to the articles since their expertise would otherwise not be available. Is there any objection? Seeing none, so moved. Those members of the administration and officers who are not residents of the district may speak to the articles. This evening, the microphone passers are Logan Wendell and Galen Fogarty. And judging by the size of the crowd, I think they will be busy. BCTV's Austin Rice is handling the video camera during the meeting. Live streaming and recording has been set up by the BCTV office. This meeting can be viewed as it's happening. Child care providers are BUHS staffers Nikki Braun and Katrina Irish. Thank you very much for your service. We'll next move to appointments. The town clerks of their respective towns and/or their assistants will be appointed as ballot tellers and vote counters for the meeting. And Sheriff Mark Anderson of the Windham County Sheriff's Office is appointed to serve as Sergeant at Arms. Now the fun part, the meeting rules. Those persons desiring to participate in any district meeting held at the Brattleboro Union High School Gymnasium must enter by the main entrance from the parking lot. All those desiring to vote must register with the town clerk at the tables near the entrance. Upon registering, if found qualified, each voter will be given a colored card, which is to be raised when the voter wishes to have their vote counted. All voters must be seated in 4 reserved sections on the gymnasium floor or in the reserved sections of the bleachers. All other persons, except police, fire officials, and technical staff, shall be seated in the areas designated for observers and visitors. At this time, I would ask that any person sitting in the reserved sections who are not qualified voters please move to the area designated for observers and visitors. Voting in all matters shall be by voice, by division of the voters, or by paper ballot. A division shall be had at the discretion of the moderator or upon a demand of 6 or more voters. A vote by paper ballot shall be had upon the demand of 7 or more voters. Voters who have not spoken at least once on the question shall not again be entitled to the floor, to the exclusion of another voter who has not spoken without leave of the voters. To gain the floor, each speaker shall rise, address the chair, give their name, town of residence. Please wait to speak until you have been passed the microphone. Throughout this meeting, I will be referring to members of the voting body as voter or member. My pronouns are he, his, him. Please let me know if you have any questions or concerns with this practice. As long established by tradition and custom, the body shall debate, the debate shall be limited to 2 minutes per person speaking for the first time on any article. Special committees of the voters may be established by the voter, but their existence shall be continued only from year to year, July 1st through June 30th, unless renewed by the next annual meeting and subsequent meetings thereafter. On the motion of any voter, any meeting may resolve itself into a committee of the whole on any pending question. All parliamentary procedures and rulings shall be governed by Robert's Rules of Order, current edition, except as modified by these rules as amended. My role as a moderator is to help you accomplish your business you intend to do. Please raise your hand and ask questions if you don't understand what is happening or if you think what is happening is wrong for some reason, or if you want to do something but you don't know how to proceed. Please tell me if you feel I'm ruling improperly. You have the right to challenge the moderator's rulings. In other words, you have the right to appeal. All right. Again, don't forget, members of the class of 2026 are out in the lobby. Please spend some money. And here we go. Article 1. I understand Vice Chair Deborah Stanford has a motion.
I move that the reports of the district officers be approved as presented.
Is there a second on the motion? The motion's been seconded. It's been moved and seconded that the reports of the district officers be accepted as presented. Is there any discussion on Article 1? Any discussion on Article 1? Seeing no discussion, are you ready to call the vote? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. The reports of the district officers have been accepted as presented. We will now have Superintendent Spino come to the microphone for discussion on Article 2.
Thank you. And before I do that, I neglected to introduce our early educator leadership team, so I'd like to do that first. Brandy Levesque. Carrie Beebe. And Deb Gass. Thank you. Moving on to Article 2, to elect the following officers of the district. Which officers shall assume office upon election and serve for a term of 1 year? Moderator, clerk, treasurer. Is there a motion?
I move that Stephen Brown be nominated to serve as moderator of the Windham Southeast School District, that Maureen Hart be nominated to serve as clerk of the district, and that Frank Rucker be nominated to serve as treasurer of the district.
Is there a second? Are there other nominations? Hearing none, we'll have a vote. All in favor of Stephen Brown as moderator, Maureen Hart as clerk, and Frank Rucker as treasurer, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. You have elected Stephen Brown as moderator, Maureen Hart as clerk, and Frank Rucker as treasurer.
Article 3, to see what compensation the Windham Southeast School District will vote to pay its members. Do we have a motion?
Yes.
That's Board Member Robin Morgan.
I move that the voters of the Windham Southeast School District authorize compensation in the amount of $7,000 to each director, and that the chair of the board will receive an additional $2,000 for a total of $72,000 for the entire board.
Thank you. Is there a second on the motion? I see a second. It's been moved and seconded that the voters of the Windham Southeast School District authorize compensation in the amount of $7,000 to each director, and that the chair of the board will receive an additional $2,000 for a total of $72,000 for the entire board. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing no discussion, are you ready to call the question? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You have passed Article 3. Article 4, to see if the voters of the school district authorize the school board to expend $62,704. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong number. I'm off to a good start. Here we go. $65,846,891, which is the amount the school board has determined to be necessary for the ensuing fiscal year. Is there a motion?
Yes, Mr. Moderator.
Board Member Sean Murphy.
I move that the voters of the Windham Southeast School District authorize the school board to expend $65,846,891, which is the amount the school board has determined to be necessary for the ensuing year.
Is there a second on the motion? I see a second. It's been moved and seconded that the voters of the Windham Southeast School District authorize the school board to expend $65,846,891, which is the amount the school board has determined to be necessary for the ensuing fiscal year. Is there any discussion on this motion?
Yes, Mr. Moderator.
Board Member Murphy.
I'll just give an overview of what we're looking at here. In the fall of 2023, as in previous years, administrators and central office developed priorities for the FY25 budget. The budget development was predicated on the stated mission that is to provide a safe, inclusive, supportive environment where all students grow academically, socially, and emotionally. The budget presented is aligned with government standards. This budget will enable the WSESD to satisfy the goal to meet standards required in learning proficiencies and skills and reflects a fiscally responsible investment needed to operate our public schools. The following conditions have significantly influenced this budget development. By Vermont statute, education spending and subsequent tax rates are determined by 4 realities. First is the dollar equivalent yield that is set by the legislature. Second is the weighted student average daily membership. Third is a state-determined number assigned to towns known as the Common Level of Appraisal, CLA. Fourth is the proposed school district expenditures. The district expenditure is the only one controlled by the school board. The school board proposed spending amounts have been relatively stable for the past 2 years. The increases have been in keeping with the national inflation numbers. Examples are the increase of 16% in health insurance costs. The negotiated contractual agreements have increased by 4%, which enables the district to retain an excellent staff going into the future. The FY25 budget remains a level staff number of approximately 435 individuals. Student enrollment over the past 3 years has shown a slight decline, with the primary decline being from tuition towns. The budget before you in the amount of $65,846,891 represents an increase of 3% over the previous year. As a result of Act 127, passed by the legislature, and the volatility of Vermont real estate market, key indicators that set the property tax rate and income sensitivity thresholds have changed substantially. The fact that properties have sold well over town's appraised value predicates a drop in the town's CLA, which increases the collective town's education tax. The Unified District Education Property Tax, as proposed, is 1.501, which represents a 1.1 decrease from the FY24 budget tax rate. This tax rate translates to an education tax liability of $1,501 for every $100,000 of assessed value of property. The common level of appraisal is a number assigned to each town that adjusts the locally assessed property values to the estimated fair market value. When the current CLA amount is divided into the equalized education tax rate proposed at 1.510, the individual tax rates increase. To reiterate, it should be understood that the CLA number is directly related to the home sale price as compared to the town assessed property value. Due to the fact that home prices have exceeded assessed value, in some cases significantly, it has predicated an unprecedented drop in the CLA, and the result is an increase in the education property tax. There do exist other factors that we anticipate will change the tax rate. The most important is the yield number previously mentioned. The legislature sets this number in May of every year. When the yield amount increases, it produces a direct effect of reducing the district unified tax rate. To get into the weeds a little bit, the yield, quote, can be thought of as the per pupil amount of spending that can be supported with a uniform homestead tax rate of $1 on homestead value, or 2% of the household income. This brings us to the importance of understanding the Vermont Home Income Sensitivity Program. Property owners file their required Vermont income tax, including the homestead declaration, which is Form HS-122, before April 15th. Property owners can also file the property tax credit claim form that is used to determine the degree of state help that will be available to defray the education tax liability. If the household income is less than $128,000 and the required Form HI-144 is submitted, the state will defray a portion of the tax due and submit the homestead education tax liability to the town that the individual lives in. In conclusion, the WSESD board unanimously supports this budget as the required amount to implement the goal of achieving the mandated job of serving all 2,200 students and 9 school sites of the district, and by extension, all the voters of the district. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Murphy. Further discussion on Article 4. Further discussion. Voter DeGray. The mic's coming.
Thank you, and I thank all the people who are here this evening. I think we're going to have well over 100 people. Not germane to the budget, but by the end of the meeting, could somebody just give me the answer to how much it cost the district for the change from the Colonel to the Bear logo and all the expense that went along with it? That would be, as a taxpayer, I just want to know what that cost the district. Sean, you mentioned something here that the budget was up 3%. One thing you didn't mention, which I think is a little bit disingenuous, nothing personal, that there's a $1.6 million debt service reduction. And Frank, if we added that to the number, how much would the budget have increased this year?
Mr. Rucker, you've been interrogated.
And what percentage would we be at?
Yes, so if you were looking at the annual report and you looked at the operations and maintenance line, you actually see it's up, Mr. DeGray. So the point is that we didn't simply decide that the 20-year bond and all the assets that go with it that have been fully depreciated don't need an investment. We actually took that 1.6 million and put it right back into the roofing projects, the HVAC projects, some of the things that Mr. Murphy was referring to. So it's actually in there. It does not reflect a reduction in the investment in our facilities.
I was going to ask everybody in here to raise their hand who understands this book. I don't. I used to be able to, but I don't understand it anymore. So I may ask some stupid questions. There was a $63,000 increase in the athletic fund, and I was looking in the book and I couldn't find it anywhere. So can you tell me why there's a $63,000 increase in the athletic fund, what it's going for, or 7%?
So, yes, I see. You're referring to, again, page 10 for folks that are looking at the annual report, and under the third line on the expenditures proposal, you see the budget of athletics, $918,000, and it's as Mr. DeGray just indicated, reflects a $63,000 increase. What we've seen in the last 2-3 years is a substantial increase in transportation costs. That's the primary additional cost driver. Our coaches and the number of programs that we offer are relatively similar to prior years, but as most folks have heard, transportation providers are having an awful time finding drivers, CDL qualified drivers, and contracted services have really increased a great deal.
So, Mr. DeGray, I'm going to interrupt you. I'm going to break from you and give some other voters an opportunity, but I'll circle back, I promise.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Further discussion on Article 4. Is there any further discussion on Article 4? The mic is coming your way.
Jody Normando from Dummerston. At the information meeting, I asked a lot of questions, but I still have more to ask. One of the things that I wanted to know is about negotiation. I wanted to know about negotiation with the teachers, with the paras, who negotiates for the superintendent, finance officer, principals. Is the board involved? How does it happen these years? It's been a while since I've been on a board, and back in my day, the board did the negotiations and then it went to a lawyer. So how does it happen? Does the state do it now, or does something else happen? Thank you.
The administration is queried.
It's actually the only major change, maybe, Jody, since you were an active board member, is I think it was in 2012, the state assigned the responsibility for negotiations to the supervisory union. The idea was to be sure that it was a collective bargaining agreement, and it created an equitable process for all districts that were part of the union. But in terms of the rest of the sort of the legal responsibility, it is the board's responsibility to negotiate the union agreements. There are 2 separate agreements, a teachers association agreement, and then what we call a classified, the educational support staff. The board has delegated the details of the negotiation process after establishing the parameters around both economic and any kind of working conditions that are of interest to the board. And then the superintendent and business administrator do negotiate directly with the union with the assistance of an attorney to whatever degree that's necessary as certain issues around labor and traditional management issues arise. If legal opinion is needed, then it's available to both sides with separate representation. As that process unfolds, which it's governed by ground rules and certainly fair labor standard practices, that the administration reports back to the board progress on the negotiation for the various terms, both economic and working conditions. The board then accepts or redirects the administration to continue the process. Ultimately, there's a tentative agreement between the boards and the union, and those tentative agreements are brought back to each body for ratification.
Okay, now we've talked about the teachers and the staff, and how about the superintendent and your position?
Sure.
Frank?
Yeah, so the vast majority of employees are part of a union, as I just described. And typically, the non-union folks in the organization follow the average of the outcome of the professional negotiated contract. So, so much of what used to be on the table for negotiations was health insurance, because it's such a substantial part of compensation. But in 2018, the legislature assigned that to a health commission that is now under the purview of a different legislative body, and all public schools in Vermont are subject to that. So those terms are negotiated with no input in terms of the negotiations process from the school boards. So that leaves, in terms of compensation, salary. So the average salary, as Mr. Murphy referred to, of 4% in fiscal year 25 was extended to the non-union folks as well. Oh, and the last piece on that is the negotiated agreements generally are 3-year terms, and the last agreement was negotiated through June of 2025.
I don't want to point any fingers or anything, because I know everybody works hard at their job, but it does seem to me kind of a conflict of interest to have the administration doing the negotiation for the teachers and then taking a certain percentage of that for themselves. Does the board have any real overseeing of this, the WSESU board? Because this is the SU board and not the SD board that does this, correct?
All boards do ratify,
all
but they absolutely do retain the authority, and they do absolutely have the final vote. The administration has no authority to bind the contract, so it's absolutely set by the board.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rucker. Further discussion on Article 4 before we return to Voter DeGray in the back in the blue shirt. I can barely see that far. Welcome back.
Hi, I'm Lisa Ford from Guilford. I've been reading a lot of the information that's been going around, and I looked at the tax rates that you've posted, and I think a solution that you have come up with is to move some surplus money over into the revenue side of our budget in order to lower the impact. And so, and then it also said that tax rate may change pending legislation. And so one thing you haven't talked about is the legislation. You talked a lot about the CLA. And so I'm wondering if that could be touched upon a little bit, because it seems a little like volatile.
Mr. Rucker, you've been queried, I believe.
Yes, thank you for the question. So we're talking about Act 127. It was passed several years ago, but became fully effective this fiscal year, July of 2024. We built the budgets under Act 127, which had many elements. The primary objective was to address equity in funding across Vermont and public schools. So that had to do with the way in which school average daily membership and students are weighted based on demographic information. Mr. Murphy referred to that in his overview. But the provision that substantially changed, and it was rescinded February 22nd, which is well after most school boards had deliberated and printed budget proposals, was a 5% cap on tax rates. So that provision, once they rescinded it, exposed the voter with our draft, what was a board-approved budget, to dramatic increases in taxes, and the board administration felt that that was not fiscally responsible, and that is what brought us to your question, is the voter, the electorate today, is voting on the amount to expend. That's the $65 million figure. The voters don't vote on the revenues, they don't vote on the CLA, they don't vote on anything else in terms of this article. It's just the amount to expend. However, as Mr. Murphy described in the funding formula, there are those three other major indices that the state essentially dictates. The only one that's not defined is the yield. Right now, the revised yield that is under discussion, it's not set in stone, but it's a policy discussion with the legislature and the Joint Fiscal Office. They're using a number that would lower what we published in January by 5%. The yield, they're adding about $500 to the yield. They're going from 9,400, which is in your annual report, on I think it's page 12. They're discussing a number of 9,899. There's no assurance that's where they're going to end up, but that number, along with, as you alluded to, utilizing a combination of reserves and potential spending freezes, would get us down to about an average tax rate increase over the last 3 years of about 4% for most of our towns, actually a little less for Brattleboro, but depending on the way a town's CLA is moved, it's going to be close to 4%. So I hope that addresses your question. The unique part of this budget development cycle is the degree to which there's uncertainty at this time of year. We always have to wait for the legislature to set the yield, but we have not seen them rescind a law that we built the budgets on that creates such a variance to where we think is a responsible budget.
Voter Ford, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I guess just follow-up question
Sure.
is, so I think the rate for Guilford was 13%. Is that the actual rate increase, or will that change?
Yeah, so that is what is estimated at this time. But do keep in mind, Guilford is the only town that's gone through a reappraisal. So even though their rate is up 13%, it's the lowest rate in the 4 towns. And again, you're referring to the way in which real estate transactions are affecting, school funding, which obviously has nothing to do with, the board's ability to control. The board is proposing a tax rate that is actually down 1%. A real estate market, as Mr. Murphy is alluding to, is translating that in Guilford to an estimated $1.56. But you can see that's a lot lower than the Brattleboro rate of $1.93. And the reason for that is the Guilford CLA is almost the same as the town CLA. That's why your tax rate is almost the same as the board's rate of $1.50, whereas Brattleboro's CLA is 13% lower than the tax assessed value, 77%. So what's that, 23%? So you see, it's because tax assessed values are so much lower in Brattleboro, the equalized tax rate that they're saying the voter will pay has to be raised. And that's the funding formula.
Okay. And the yield is yet to come.
And the yield is yet to come, but the history over several years in a row consecutively, the legislature starts with a lower yield number and raises it, through their deliberations into May. I don't think that it's likely they're going to go lower than 9,899. If Emily Kornhauser is in the room, she might have an opinion on that. I'm certainly not guaranteeing any figure. I've just been counseled or given guidance that it's a responsible public policy number to discuss because it is in part of the process.
Further discussion on Article 4 in the red shirt. The mic's coming on your left.
Ellie Solomon, Putney. I just wanted to clarify that the percent increase is a percent over the last year, whereas the preliminary number is the property tax rate being assessed.
Yeah, it's a good question. We've thrown a lot of percents out. So spending, the $65 million that Mr. Murphy referred to in the overview, is up 3%. And that's what the board gets to control. And as you heard, we feel that that's a responsible spending plan. Then we get into the funding formula, and those three statistics skew our flat tax rate into these numbers that you're asking for. So you've just asked for us to clarify. Yes, we published what was the yield at the time, and that you may have remembered. You may be looking at, like in any particular town, the first line on the page 12 in the annual report says a projected tax rate of Brattleboro going up 17%, Putney going up 19%. Right? You were referring to that. We have provided in a yellow single sheet document, and it's on our website. There you go. You have it. A revised number. So you're probably looking at the Putney number of 12.6, and that is with a higher yield and us applying the $3 million that's on the other side of that page that the earlier citizen had asked about. And that is, still subject to change, but we think at this point in the year, given that many budgets failed across the state, the draw on the edge fund is likely to be lower than the earlier estimates, which will create space for the legislature to consider increasing the yield.
Thank you.
Further discussion on the article in the blue shirt. If the mic passers could stay in the general area, that would be helpful. Help us.
Richard Mills, Dummerston. I have a revenue question that's on page 14, and it's a revenue loss question, and it might be because it stopped being funded last year. It's the ESSER 3 or ESSER 3 revenue. It's the biggest line of 2,681,686, which also matches the amended number for FY24. I don't understand what ESSER is, please.
Mr. Rucker, it sounds like a question for you, if you so choose to answer.
Yes. This is a result of the COVID pandemic and the federal funding that was shared across the nation and as well here in Vermont. And that funding was scheduled to be, essentially sunset in the year we are in now, fiscal year 24. We will finish up some projects and utilize funding in the first quarter of fiscal year 25, but it really needs to be earned and applied for and utilized. So that is, we knew that was coming, and we've prepared for that transition.
Further discussion on the motion before we return to Mr. DeGray in the back in the green shirt.
Hi, Beth Bristol from Guilford. I'm thinking about the district consolidation that we went through a few years ago and about the opportunities that we talked about would come out of that consolidation effort. And I'm wondering what work has been done to explore those opportunities and what those resulted in and what other opportunities may still exist.
The administration is queried. Mr. Spino?
I think the greatest example, Beth, of how the unification really benefited us was when we had to shut down and engage in a school year that we've never seen before, like we've never seen before. So that year, 2020, 2021, coming back into our buildings, we essentially, on the fly, developed remote-only schools and in-person schools that were functioning at the same time. We were able to do that over the summer because we were a unified school district. And administrators collaborated throughout the summer, shared resources, shared staff, to build multiple schools, including a remote school made up of various schools combined and putting those resources together with teachers and administrative oversight. So I think that's the greatest example. Moving forward, we've always been a very collaborative school district, but the opportunities to share resources, there are not as many boundaries to sharing resources in our work as we move forward in terms of sharing staff, strategies. I don't know if that answers your question fully, but.
Quick follow-up?
Yeah, quick follow-up. I'm curious if there are other opportunities that maybe we haven't recognized yet. It was one of the kind of compelling reasons for the consolidation, and I'm just curious if there's more work to be done to see if we can benefit further.
I think there definitely is. We certainly don't have all the answers and everything figured out, but using our resources as efficiently as possible is a major topic in how we design our continuous improvement plan and how we work throughout the school system.
Further discussion. I'll come back to you, I promise. And yes. Kate O'Connor. Hiding back there.
Hiding behind a mask. I'm Kate O'Connor from Brattleboro. I'm looking at the tax increase impact and kind of freaking out a little bit. So my question for you is, on the back of the yellow sheet, that it talks about the $3 million contingency that you're actually going to add back in as revenue. Right now you're using that amount based on the yield number of 9,899. If the yield comes in higher, are you going to think about not using all the 3 million? I mean, is the 3 million being used based on what we're getting from the state? Because my question there is, if we get more from the state, if we use the whole 3 million, our taxes could go down. So I'm trying to figure out who gets to make that decision about using the 3 million, because we could actually be lower if the state gives us more and we use the 3 million. Does that make sense?
Mr. Rucker, you are queried, I believe.
Yes, great question, and one that we really wrestled with because of the unique nature of it being a discretion around what's fiscally responsible. So to answer your question, we started with, given the inflation rate of 6.5% for the period ending in December of 2022, and then this most recent December 2023, 3.4%. You know, that's a CPI number published by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And knowing that we have spent spending increases of 2.7% last year, if you were here in this room considering the budget for fiscal year 24, and then this year you see it's 3%. So within that context, the board, particularly the finance committee, in deliberation and then discussion with the board, said, what is a responsible tax impact? And when we look at it for just 1 year, as you just said, it's a scary number. But largely because if you look at it for 2 years in a row, the Brattleboro tax rate was essentially unchanged, right? On that yellow sheet, or even in the annual report, you see fiscal year 23, the Brattleboro rate was $1.74. Fiscal year 24 was $1.75. It changed 1 penny, essentially no percent change. So that is a result of the legislature really manipulating that yield number. Or another way to say it is, if you look at the top of the page, in 22, the yield was 10,000. In 23, it was 13,000. In years past, we'd only see it change maybe 3 or 4%, like inflation. That's a 30% change. And then in fiscal year 24, they pushed a surplus in at the very end of the year and moved that yield up again from 13 to 15. That's why the CLA adjusted tax rates were flat. We didn't think that was a good idea from a fiscal point of view, because it created the conundrum that we're all facing today, which is you've got 0% change in 23, 0% in 24, and now people look at a 10%, and of course that's a scary number. To answer your question, what we did was we looked at what we thought, given the inflation rate, given the needs of our students, but also the constraints of our own economy, a less than 4% average tax rate, CLA tax rate that's in the mailbox for the taxpayer, a rate of 4%, or slightly less than 4%, would be fiscally responsible in this environment. And so to answer your question, the discretion is based on that rationale. So if the legislature moves that yield from 9,900, where it is now, 98, 99, as a talking number, and let's say they go to 10,000, we would want to hold the taxpayer at this average 4% or less impact. And we don't want to try to play any games, nobody's trying to add to reserves that are not needed. But the driving force here, as Mr. Murphy described, is addressing those needs that we know have grown severely throughout the pandemic, and our $65,800,000 budget represents a staffing allocation, an investment in training, and in all of those supports that we've seen have a really substantial impact on kids. We want to retain that, but to the extent it exceeds a 4% average increase, we will apply all of those discretionary assumptions. Another quick point is, if you look at our capital plan, it's on the website, we've discussed it at several board meetings, we have $10 million in projects over the next 3-4 years. So we need those reserves to whatever extent we can retain them. That's why we would retain them. It wouldn't be to allow a higher tax rate to go by. Everything is accounted for.
We are taking debate on Article 4 on the motion, which is to expend $65,846,891, which is the amount the school board has determined to be necessary for the ensuing fiscal year. Further debate on Article 4 before we return back to some of the folks who have already previously addressed the article. Any further debate? We'll go in the blue shirt. If you could please state your name and your town.
Yep. Meredith Wade, Putney. I just wondered if you could give us a little bit more information about with the loss of ESSER funding, the federal funding. It says in the report that you were going to retain 15 positions. Could you tell us a little bit more about the range of those positions, what that costs the district, and are those people in all our schools?
The administration is queried. Mr. Spino.
I'll speak to the positions. Frank can speak to the cost. But essentially, those positions are positions like social worker positions, academic support teacher positions, instructional coaching positions. And when we first received these ESSER funding, we really took an approach of looking at how to balance how we use that money. So we looked at two things, building infrastructure and then support for students. So we invested a lot of that money into our buildings to create safer air quality in all of our buildings and energy efficiency. And then we also balanced that with providing more support for our students because they need it. I mean, school was shut down overnight on us. And we see the impact of that in the data that we collect daily, whether that's academic data, absenteeism, behavior, social emotional data. So our response in using those funds to support students and families was to invest in some limited positions around social work, for social emotional support, and academic support teachers for additional intervention and academic support. As we built our budget that we're presenting to you tonight, the framework was what's best for kids. We've invested ESSER funds into new positions. Let's evaluate which positions we want to move forward with and which positions we can live without. We did that. And those 15 positions that you're referring to, we feel are positions that we need to support our students moving forward and to start seeing that academic achievement take off like we know it will.
Further debate on Article 4. Let's return back to Voter DeGray.
Second half of the question.
Excuse me?
The second half of her question was to have the cost.
I'm sorry. Voter Wade, do you have
Yeah, the cost.
I'm sorry, okay, the cost. Thank you.
Yeah, your estimated cost question, that would be about 1.5 million, approximately. Yes, and all of our schools had utilization of that funding, very equitably. We always start based on where the student need is. Some of the charts that you see in the annual report do show the variation in poverty from town to town, and that certainly has a bearing on how resources are allocated.
I think a connection I can make to Beth's question from earlier on in terms of the unification of the school district is when we build our budgets and think about resources and equity, we're not doing that in silos in each of our individual towns. But that is a process that involves all of the schools working together. And we did that in determining how we were going to utilize those ESSER funds. We went through a process. What do schools have in place to support their students? In the first year of the union, some schools had much more supports than other schools based on budget development over the years that they entertained with their towns and their individual school boards. ESSER was an opportunity to even the playing field in terms of what those resources look like across all of our town schools.
Mr. DeGray.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I had a few more questions, but I think I'm going to make a motion. I move to reduce the budget by $3 million using the back of the sheet on the handout, which would be...
So I'm going to stop you. I'll let you speak to the motion If it's seconded and we get to debate, I'll come back to you for comment on the motion.
Okay.
So you're moving to reduce the total figured by $3 million?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just going to come up with a figure first, and I'll ask for a second. So that figure would be
$62,846,851.
all right. Mr. DeGray has moved to amend the figure of $65,846,891 to $62,846,891. Is there a second on the DeGray amendment? And I see a second. Mr. DeGray, I'll return back to you for comments on your amendment.
Thank you. The dollar amounts are what the board suggested. Even though the discussion with Kate asked a very prudent question, that there's a possibility that our tax rate could go down lower than 4%. In Brattleboro, I know a lot of people who are struggling deeply. The food pantries are maxed out. I talk to people every day who are struggling, and I think that if in fact the tax rate went below 4%, that wouldn't be a bad thing, especially in Brattleboro. And I'm guessing when I look at some of the tax rates for the surrounding communities, you know, Guilford 13.4, Putney, I have it someplace here, everybody is up. So I believe we should do this now, and this would be the prudent thing to do for the taxpayers of our district. And I'm good.
So we are now taking debate on the DeGray amendment, which is the reduction by $3 million. So if we could try to limit our debate on the specific amendment in the shirt right in front of me. And we got a mic coming. If you could please state your name and your town.
Thank you, Jackie Reynolds, Brattleboro. I'm going to turn around because it's awkward. I too would, of course, enjoy lowering my tax rate. However, knowing that we have hit the ESSER cliff and a lot of supports we had that our kids truly need are going away, and that our board has presented us with a budget that is going to cover as much of that as they reasonably can, feels very important to me because I know that our kids still have these needs. I also think that we should keep the budget as presented because our elected board members support it with good reason. I think that our central office staff and our principals budget responsibly, exactly like Mr. Spino said, coming into it with, thoughts of what do our kids really, really need. And I don't see this, it's unfortunate if the tax rate is a complicated issue, but it's just more unfortunate for kids to not have the things that they need. And I am very appreciative of the contingency plan that could make our tax rate not a complete nightmare. That was wonderful. It's great that the principals had a lot of input in some of those decisions because they know better than anybody what our kids need. But I wouldn't be happy. Any opportunity for tax savings feels good, except if it's going to have a huge negative impact on our kids concerning their supports and also the safety of their buildings, then I don't feel good about it. So I'm hoping we can continue and pass the budget as presented. Thank you.
Further debate on the DeGray amendment. Is there further debate on the DeGray amendment? Oh. If you could please state your name and your town and residence, please.
Hi, I'm Isaac Freitas-Egan from Guilford. I just want to make the connection between the suffering that's happening in Brattleboro right now and investing in schools. I think that it's it should be more obvious that investing in schools is the right thing to do with taxpayer money, because the people who are struggling in Brattleboro are not property owners very often. They are renters, they have kids, and those kids get to eat at school, And being with hungry kids when your life is already really hard is also really hard. So giving schools what we need to serve the children of this district is not harming the adults and young adults in this district who are struggling with addiction and poverty and all of those systemic issues. So, reducing a budget that is going to help schools in the name of helping our community is a complicated thing to do. So, yeah, that's what I'll say.
Hi, I'm Martha Noyce. I'd like to support Mr. DeGray's suggestion with cutting the budget $3 million. I've been a longtime resident of this town, a homeowner, and I'm also a teacher and currently teach in another state. And I see the struggle from both ends, from the end of a property owner, taxpayer, and from the end of a teacher. I think it would be worth considering being a good role model to our children, to the students, in saying and admitting that times are tough, budgets are tight, and we would be acting fairly and appropriately if we tightened the budget, as we do in our homes, cut items, and lowered the budget $3 million.
Any one of the mic passers? There we go. Thank you.
George Carville, Brattleboro. Judging from what I've heard in applause, Mr. Moderator, I'd like to move the question.
All right. The question has been called. Yes. If you could please state your name and your town.
Fred Brunig, Brattleboro. I would like to appeal to my fellow voters to not have this be a popularity contest. I mean, the applause is just not appropriate, I think.
So noted. So the question has been called to end debate. That is non-debatable. It requires a 2/3 vote. A vote in favor of ending debate will we will then call the question. If the motion fails, we'll return back to debating the DeGray amendment. So all those in favor of ending debate, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say nay. Nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. There's been a request for a division, and the moderator will call for a division as well. So I will ask you to stand if you can, or raise your hand, and please stay standing and keep your hand raised until your vote has been counted by our town clerks. I'm going to give the town clerks just a few seconds to get situated, and I will call the question again in just a few moments. All right, the town clerks look like they're in position. So all those in favor of ending debate, please rise or raise your hand. Town clerks, are we all set? I think you may sit. And then just as I'll call the nays in just a moment. Okay, so if we could all, again, please rise. All those in favor of ending debate, please rise or raise your hand. We need to take a recount. I appreciate everybody's patience. All right, I think you can all sit. Thank you. The clerks, all those opposed to ending debate, please rise or raise your hand. And please remain standing until your vote's been counted. I think you can sit down. Thank you. I'm going to just take a very brief recess to confer with the clerks and get the numbers. I'll be right back. All right, the results of the vote to end debate, it was 186 in favor of ending debate and 25 opposed. The ayes carried the day. The question will now be called, and we're, just to remind everybody, we're voting on the DeGray amendment, which a vote of aye will amend the main motion to $62,846,891. And if that motion carries, we will then debate further on the main motion, which would be amended. If the motion fails, we will return back to the main motion of $65,846,891. So all those in favor of the DeGray amendment, please say aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The nays appear to have it. The nays have it. The DeGray amendment's has failed. We will now return back to the main motion, and I will read the main motion for everybody. The main motion reads as follows: that the voters of the Windham Southeast School District authorize the school board to expend $65,846,891, which is the amount the school board has determined to be necessary for the ensuing fiscal year. Further debate on the main motion? Ms. Normandeau. And thank you for your patience. We need a microphone for Ms. Normandeau.
Thank you. First of all, I really object to calling the motion when there are people that still have something to say, not necessarily me, but other people. If we're going round and round in circles, I can understand, but I hate it when it comes right out in the beginning. I have some other questions, and they're really simple, Frank. They're not difficult. There are several things in the budget, and you know better than we do that this budget is just horrendous to try to understand. And I don't see any way we can make it better. But I do have some questions on some items that appear to be more than one person, but it doesn't say it's more than one person as far as I can see. One is the teacher's English language, L, for $440,500. That's got to be more than one person. And so in the future, can it somehow put 2 people, 3 people, or whatever, so it makes it easier to read? And so I'll continue. HR director and benefits coordinator. I gather that's more than one person.
Let me interrupt you. I'm pretty sure you're looking at the supervisory union budget.
Well, that supervisory union budget is in the SD budget.
It is as an assessment, but it's net of revenues. But sure, go ahead.
Administrative instruction. Up 27.76%, $3,667,197. What is that? Do you guys get instruction?
Yeah, so you are referring to the supervisory union budget, which is
yes.
Deliberated in by the boards September through December, and then voted on December 20th. So you're referring to the supportive instruction, which includes the English language learner program for our 5 indivials that teach kids who don't speak the English language. You're referring to the Asian Studies program that we have as part of instruction out of the supervisory union, because it's shared across districts. And then you're also referring to the curriculum assessment office. And that would be how we, again, according to a supervisory union state statute, are obligated to be the coordinator and the essentially the curriculum development, so that our lesson plans align with state assessments. So that's the segment of the supervisory union budget that you're referring to.
Also, diversity coordinator, up 18.17%. Is that more than one person too?
It is, yes.
Okay.
So it's 2 positions.
All right, so maybe it would be better if we could easier find that. One of the things, couple of things, and I mentioned this at the last meeting, we all need to pay attention to what's going on in the legislature. And I hope, I just watched something that was really great and about a superintendent up in the North Country testifying, and it was really heartening, heartbroken, but there's a lot of things that are going up there, and I hope that everybody here pays attention to what the legislature's doing. And the last thing I'll say is There are things, I will vote for the budget because I know everybody's heart's in the right place for the kids. But there are things in the budget that if I were doing the budget, I would cut. And, but I don't want to get into them now, but I hope maybe down the road we can all talk about some of those things. Thank you.
Thank you. Further debate on the main motion. Is there any further debate? Yes.
Hi, Martha Noyce. I too had some questions with your topic, and I was wondering if you could give me some numbers regarding the students who are going to be benefiting from these programs, the ELL, because on page 7 it says new SCSU curriculum direct position, additional ELL positions due to increased need. What number of students are growing to substantiate this need?
I
Mr.
believe
Rucker,
right
you're,
now, thank you. I believe we have 70 students that are now in our school systems. This is partially affiliated with the resettlement actions that have been going on for the last 2-3 years, and we anticipate, I think I've heard as many as another 100 families over the next year. So that's approximately.
Thank you.
Further debate. Moderator O'Connor.
Hi, Kate O'Connor from Brattleboro. I'm actually wish we had more time to talk about Mr. DeGray's motion or amendment. So I'm going to make a little bit of a plea that I know no one's going to listen to, but I sort of feel like we're not the masters of our own destiny right now, where our tax increase or tax decrease, hopefully, is concerned. And I'd love to make a plea to the school board that you really consider, even if the yield comes in higher than the 9,889 or whatever it is on the yellow sheet, that you would still consider applying that $3 million so that our taxes can go down. You know, you're ready to do it. It's really not a cut to services, as I think people were thinking what Mr. DeGray was asking for. So I really just would love for you to really consider, you know, these 13, 14, 10% tax increases are a lot. And I'm going to make a speech at Brattleboro's town meeting about, you know, what the normal people in our community, you know, are seeing. We're not seeing 10, 12, 13, 14% increases in salaries. I didn't get that in my job. I wish I did. You know, if you're on Social Security, you're getting a 3% increase this year. Minimum wage, you're getting a 3.2% increase. People who live in Brattleboro, the median household income is $45,000. And, you know, sometimes we talk about, well, it's only the property taxpayers that pay. Well, people on Social Security and people on minimum wage pay property taxes, and saying, well, their income sensitivity, you know, we can't rely on saying, well, we can raise taxes as much as we want because there's income sensitivity. I think we really got to stop thinking that way. And, you know, if you're a renter, if your rent goes up, it's not because you have a mean landlord, it's because the landlord's taxes have gone, just on the school side, if you live in Brattleboro, it's going to go up almost 11%. And on the town side, we're about to go up 4.3%. So I guess my plea is that please really consider using the $3 million contingency regardless of what the yield comes in with the state. And if it goes up more, please still use it, because I think we could all use a little break in our taxes. Thank you.
Further debate on Article 4. Mr. DeGray.
Thank you. I wasn't going to bring this up, but Mrs. Normando asked a question. And one of the things when you're as popular as I am, people talk to you all the time. And I actually had a conversation with a parent who has a student in the middle school and in the high school. And they're honor roll students. And I know both children. and they're very good kids. They're active in the school. And I asked them, what's the climate in the school? And they both rolled their eyes. We have some serious diversity issues up in the middle school and in the high school. There's probably a lot of teachers here that know this, and I'm sure that the administrators know this, but we in the public don't know this unless you're talking to somebody or unless you have a student here. And it's a serious problem. And they're very concerned about the issues that are going around and the bullying that's going on and the fighting that's going on. And we're going to spend $65 million on education. And I'm saying, are we getting our money's worth? And I'm not sure we are. So we have some serious problems, and I don't know if somebody up there, a school board member, because if you're not hearing this, you're not doing your job. You're not asking the questions that you should be asking about what's going on in our schools. And whether it be up here at the high school, the middle school, the career center, or any one of our elementary schools, you need to get and talk to people and find out what's going on. Don't get all your information from one side, and that's the administration. And if you can't do that, then you don't deserve to sit up there. Find out what's going on in your school. We have some serious problems here, and I hope they get addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeGray. Further debate on the motion?
Mr. Moderator?
I'm going to pause for a second. I think the board would like to respond.
Thanks for your question, Mr. DeGray. I just wanted to invite anyone who's here to attend and watch our meetings, because this is something that we actually talk about quite a lot. We actually also have 2 high school students on our board, and they share at nearly every single meeting really specific details about what's going on in the school's climate. So also, I happen to have a child who attends here. I also have a child at the middle school. I also have a child at one of the Bratt elementary schools. So I don't feel like it's very accurate to think that board members aren't in touch with what's going on in the schools and we only hear from one side of it. I think that we're pretty deeply invested in finding out and hearing about and addressing what's going on in the school culture at all schools, and we talk about it quite a bit. But one thing that I can tell you will definitely not improve school culture is cutting the budget, because that removes the essential supports that we're trying to provide to these students to address the very problems that you're talking about and that I think everyone in our community is concerned about. The thing that I was actually raising my hand for, though, was about the $3 million contingency plan. I think that my impression, and I'm not going to be on the board after today, so I'm not going to be in charge of that money, but my impression from what we've heard from the administrators is that almost all of that money is revenue that can just be moved into our budgetary assumptions. There's only one small part of it that was about $768,000, which was potential spending freeze in the school. So that's the part that I would anticipate may be walked back if the yield comes back in a really favorable way. That basically it's funding that's in the budget that we're voting on right now that they could then decide to not spend and not hire or refill positions or fill them at like a part-time or shared across schools level in order to save a little extra money in that way. But that only is about $768,000. All the rest of the $3 million is just money that we received as grants, as interest income, and then that $1.2 million from the fund reserves. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you, Board Member Morgan. Further debate in the maroon, the voter in the maroon shirt.
My name is Anne Kaplinka-Lair. I live in Brattleboro and I work at the middle school, so I'd like to respond to Voter DeGray's comments by saying it has been a challenging year at the middle school, and for that very reason, I would agree with what Representative Morgan was saying earlier about supporting the budget in full in order to better support our students. I would say our supports are maxed out at the moment, and we could use as much support as possible to support those very students who are coming from our community needing those supports at this moment. So I support voting for the budget in full. Thank you.
Thank you. Voter in the way back in the blue.
Hi, my name is Carmen Winchester. I am a resident and taxpayer of town of Brattleboro. I'm also a teacher at Dummerston School. And I just want to see if you could quietly raise your hand if you feel like you're living paycheck to paycheck. Yeah, I think we're all feeling the financial crunch that the United States is putting us all in. And I just want to point out that our legislature, the state of Vermont, has put us in this situation. And I think that the board and the administration has very responsibly presented us with a budget. And while we are not happy about the situation, the circumstances, I appreciate the person's comments that spoke just before me. Sorry, I don't remember your name. That what we're dealing with in our schools and the needs that we have, the budget reflects what we need. And we invite you to come in. The gentleman that spoke a while ago says, get in our schools and see what's going on. We invite you to. We want you to. We want you to see what's happening. We're doing really good work. And we need the support and we need the financing behind it for the support and staffing that we need in our schools to do that work that we're doing with students in our population that have some very significant needs. So I just wanted to say, if you're angry about the money, pay attention and vote in November and point your emotions towards your state legislature. Thank you.
Another voter in the way back. Can't even see what color shirt you're wearing, but I see a hand that went up. Up, the hand go down. Up, it's up, and now it's down. Raise it high. Raise your hand nice and high in the back, way back. There you go. Up. We'll come back. Looks like we're going up to the
I
voter.
snuck in.
Yeah.
I'm Ellen Rago from Putney, and I'm a teacher also at Dummerston School. I've been a teacher for 20 years, and I think something that taxpayers need to know is that our schools today are not the same as our schools 5 years ago. Our students' needs are not the same as our students' needs were 5 years ago. The social emotional needs are greater, the behavioral needs are greater, and the academic needs are greater. Since the pandemic, schools have been providing way more services than we were before. And as a result of that, we need more support and we need more money. The role of schools has changed. This is all happening at the same time as our loss of ESSER funds, and now this change in the funding formula by the legislature. That's the reason why we need to pass this budget.
All right, let's return to the voter in the middle row in the back, I guess the left side looking up at me in the back. If that voter still wants to, I see the hand. Raise your hand nice and high. There you go. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lisa from Guilford. I'm not a teacher, but I
Lisa,
wanted...
could you give us your last name? I'm sorry.
Sure, Lisa Ford from Guilford.
Thank you.
Guilford. I'm not a teacher, but I also agree that this is a very responsible budget. 3% increase is really not a lot. Unfortunately, it is impacting our taxes, unjustly, I want to say. And I also want to make the point that it is because of a flawed education spending formula that has been put into effect by our legislators. And it is unfortunate that Emily Kornheiser isn't here because she's the chair of she's a Brattleboro rep who's the chair of our Ways and Means Committee where these funding formulas come out of. And I want to support what other people have said, is that you should vote in November and hold these legislators accountable, because it's not our school board. They're doing the best that they can. I really believe that they are. Thank you.
Thank you. Further debate on the motion?
Thanks. I'm Isaac Freitas-Egan again from Guilford. I grew up here, went to this high school. I teach in this district now. I just want to point out the fact that some people who have spoken in favor of reducing the budget are using terminology like normal people in Brattleboro and are talking about a diversity issue. Those are phrases and words that are, there should be no normal person in Brattleboro. We are a community that, I hope we are a community that welcomes all different types of people, no matter where they come from or why they are here. So if you are a property owner in Brattleboro, you have an opportunity to support your community right now by saying, I have the ability to vote for this budget and pay a 3% increase in my property taxes to help the people who are homeless on your streets and are suffering and are in pain. Last year we had a lot of people die on our streets. Of course, some of that was drug addiction and overdoses, and some of it was mental health, and that suffering is something that we can all help to alleviate. So that's why I'm going to vote to pass the budget.
Thank you. I'd like to just remind the voters that we are debating the merits of the motion, which is to expend $65,846,891. So if we could try to remain focused on the merits of the motion. Is there any further debate on Article 4? Are you ready to call the question? So I will now reread the motion in case anybody here forgot. The motion on the floor currently is that the voters of the Windham Southeast School District authorize the school board to expend $65,846,891, which is the amount the school board has determined to be necessary for the ensuing fiscal year. All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. The motion has passed. You have passed a budget under Article 4. We'll now move to Article 5, which is the transaction of other business. And I would just remind the body that pursuant to 17 VSA 2660D, the article entitled Other Business shall not be used for taking binding municipal action, and the moderator shall so rule. Is there any motions under new business? Voter Naylor.
Christina Naylor, Dummerston. I move that the district nominate one representative from each forming town to serve on the Independent Budget Review Committee for the upcoming year.
So what we'll do, if there's a second to your motion, Voter Naylor, we will then take nominations for each town. But first, is there a second on the motion? I see a second. It's been moved and seconded that the Windham Southeast School District nominate one representative from each forming town to serve on the Independent Budget Review Committee for the upcoming year. Is there any debate on the motion? And again, I would remind the voters that this would be a non-binding vote for the school board. Is there any debate on the motion? Voter Naylor.
Christina Naylor from Dummerston. I've served on the IRBC for the last 3 years. The IRBC was created by a vote of the WSESD electorate in 2021.
Excuse me, I don't mean to interrupt, but for people who are exiting, if you could just try to be as quiet as possible, because we are still conducting business. Thank you. Go on.
The purpose of the committee is to independently review the budget and create a report which explains the budget to the electorate and also takes into account the interests and concerns of each town in the district. The annual report is an excellent 80-page document and presents all the information you need. However, it's a little hard to follow. But these requirements are dictated by statute. So the IRBC tries to create a document that helps explain the very complex funding formula to voters. Also, in our merged district, board members represent all the students and all the taxpayers. So it is challenging for board members to write a report that addresses more local town needs. For example, this year, our report spent extra time explaining how the CLA affected each town's tax rate. The committee work takes about 50 hours in a regular year, 60 to 70 hours if the legislature changes the funding formula on February 22nd. It requires attending about 10 to 12 one-hour budgeting meetings from November to mid-January. And then once the budget is completed, we scramble to put a report together and get that out in time for budgeting session. It's helpful if committee members have some interest in finances. We are fortunate to have a veteran business manager and veteran board members who are able to explain the particulars of school finance formulas and able to answer questions along the way to help assure committee members understand the budget and tax consequences for our district. And as Jackie Reynolds, our departing Brattleboro representative, says, we like to put the fun in the funding formula.
Is there any debate on the Naylor motion? See a hand on the stage way back. Again, if you could please state your name and your town.
Hi, I'm Amit Sharma from Guilford, and I'd like to make a nomination for the review committee.
So we are going to first vote on the motion. If the motion carries, I will then take nominations and we'll go town by town.
Cool.
Thank you.
David Levenbach, Brattleboro. Just wanted to thank the committee for its work and commend them for a fine report.
Is there any further debate on the Naylor motion? Are we ready to call the question? All right, I will reread the motion. The motion currently on the floor is that the Windham Southeast School District nominate one representative from each forming town to serve on the Independent Budget Review Committee for the upcoming year. Again, this is a non-binding vote. All those in favor of the Naylor motion, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You have passed a Naylor motion. Now we will take nominations. And what I think we'll do is we'll go town by town. And if we have a contested race, we'll address that when it happens. If we don't have contested races, I may move an entire slate. So we'll start with Brattleboro in no particular order. Are there any nominations for Brattleboro? Dick DeGray.
I nominate Richard Levy.
And nominations do not require a second. Are there any further nominations for the town of Brattleboro for the Independent Budget Review Committee? Any further nominations? We'll next go to the town of Dummerston, and I will recognize Ms. Normandeau, who I believe is from Dummerston.
I nominate Christine Naylor. She has done a fantastic job on this.
Christine Naylor is nominated for the town of Dummerston. Any further nominations for the town of Dummerston? All right, we'll go to the next town. No particular order, Guilford. Are there any nominations for Guilford? Voter in the bleachers?
I nominate Maggie Foley of Guilford.
That's Maggie Foley?
Yes.
Any further nominations for the town of Guilford? And last but not least, we will go to Putney. Any nominations for Putney? Yes.
I nominate with great thanks Ellie Solomon.
Could you repeat that first name?
Ellie, E-L-L-I-E, Solomon.
Any further nominations for Putney? All right, we don't have any contested races. So what I plan to do is to move the entire slate, and I will read the towns and the names, and we will take a vote. Well, first I should ask if there's any debate on the candidates or from the body regarding the nominations. I'm not seeing any. So we will now go to a vote. And again, we have from the town of Brattleboro, Richard Levy, from the town of Dummerston, Christina Naylor, from the town of Guilford, Maggie Foley, and from the town of Putney, Ellie Solomon. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You have elected a group of hardworking, independent budget review committee members for the upcoming year. Again, as I've mentioned in previous moments throughout this meeting, that was a non-binding vote. Any other business to transact? Ms. Normandeau.
I would like to congratulate and thank Tim Mayseal for winning a 3-year seat on the board, as well as Brian Raymer from Guilford and Colleen Savage for winning 3-year terms. And I'd also like to thank Matt Shibley for winning his seat. And have I forgotten anybody? Oh, Anne, because she wasn't running against anybody. She's been on this board forever, and she's great. I want to say, unfortunately, Kelly isn't here. She's gone to see her grandson. But Kelly has been a super board member here. I first met Kelly before she was even a board member in Guilford, I think. And she's just done a marvelous job. Somebody said once that she was the heart of the board, and I think she really was. And she had an awful job of being chair for the last 2 years with all the horrible things that are happening around our district. And unfortunately, a lot of people blamed her for it, and she only did what the board wanted her to. And I'm just so sad to see her gone. I've also watched Robin Morgan for several years when she was on the Brattleboro board, and now she's on this board. And she's leaving us, and I think that's not a good thing, because Robin has tried to keep that board honest and on its way, and she takes great notes, and she remembers exactly what she's got in there. So if somebody's saying something different, Robin steps right up. So I'd like to have you honor the people that are coming and the people that are going.
Thank you, Ms. Normandeau. Any further business to transact?
John Franklin from Guilford. I know it might be a logistical nightmare and a lot to think about, but I was wondering about maybe changing the schedules and adding some buses and taking away having split schedules, because having little tiny kids getting on a bus an hour before high schoolers and middle schoolers is seemingly ridiculous. And it just really disadvantages people who could count on older kids to take care of their younger siblings. And I know that there's a lot of empty seats on a lot of buses, and I don't see how there might be a way to reconfigure routes and maybe save some money on transportation as well.
Before we go to the end, I need to get the numbers from the town clerks, which are on their way up. And while they're on their way up, is there any other business for Article 5?
I'll just add, Steve, Jody, once again, you stole my thunder, second year in a row. But I would, as your superintendent, I would like to acknowledge our departing school board members. Public service is not easy. Being a school board member is not easy. So I'd like to publicly thank Kelly Young, who's not here with us, and Robin Morgan.
Mr. DeGray.
I did ask a question earlier on about what it cost the district for the name change, and I didn't think that was germane for the budget, but can you tell me what everything that we had to purchase and change and paint, what that cost to the district was?
Yes, I'm roughly estimating about $60,000.
Any further business? Before I read the numbers and entertain a motion to adjourn, I want to thank the town clerks who are the unsung heroes of the meeting. If we could have a quick round of applause for the appreciated work. All right. Tonight's numbers. Brattleboro, out of the 8,925 registered voters, we had 120 in attendance, or 1.3% of the voters. Dummerston, out of the 1,584 voters, you had 35 in attendance for 2.2%. Guilford, out of 1,781, you had 49 in attendance, and you win tonight. You had 2.8% of your voters. Way to go, Guilford. And Putney, out of the 2,002 registered voters in the town, 38 attended for 1.9%. So total voters in the district, 14,292 voters, 242 attended tonight for 1.7%. Are we ready to entertain a motion to adjourn? Ms. Barton.
Mr. Moderator.
Ms. Barton, if you could wait till we get the mic and we'll get you amplified here. We want everybody to hear it.
Boy, I can't talk loud enough. Mr. Moderator, I move we adjourn.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. The meeting has adjourned at 8:55. Thank you.